Exam AZ-500 review questions. This is the Microsoft Certified Azure Security Engineer Associate exam. Those of you who are preparing here, you can read a brief overview. This is from Microsoft Learn. So if you are in the path to become a Microsoft Azure Security Engineer, this is a must-use resource. The courses included in this review questions, or the material included in this review questions, are from again the Microsoft Learn, and the topics the topics covered here are AZ-500 security, identity and access, secure networking, secure compute, storage and databases, and secure Azure using Microsoft Defender for Cloud and Microsoft Sentinel.
Question number 1. You have a Microsoft Entra tenant. All the users in the tenant have Windows devices that are Microsoft Entra joined. You need to implement multi-factor authentication, MFA. The solution must ensure that Azure MFA can be used without internet access or mobile network availability. Which authentication method should you use? A. Calls to a phone. B. Text messages. C. The Microsoft Authenticator app. Or D. Windows Hello for Business. The correct answer here is Windows Hello for Business. The requirement is to implement MFA without internet access or mobile network availability. Windows Hello for Business uses biometric data like facial recognition or fingerprint or a PIN, and works locally on the device. It can be configured as part of a strong authentication method in Microsoft Entra joint devices and satisfies MFA requirements without needing a phone, SMS, or internet. Question 2. You have a Microsoft Entra tenant. Users have both Windows and non-Windows devices. All users have smartphones. You plan to implement Microsoft Entra Multi-Factor Authentication, MFA. You need to ensure that MFA is used to authenticate users to Azure resources. The solution must be implemented without any additional cost. Which 3 MFA method should you implement? Each correct answer presents a complete solution. A. FIDO2 security keys. B. OAuth software tokens. C. SMS verification. D. The Microsoft Authenticator app. F. Voice call verification. Or E. Windows Hello for Business. To meet the requirement of implementing Microsoft Entra Multi-Factor Authentication, MFA, without incurring any additional cost, and considering that all users have smartphones, the correct 3 methods to implement are 1. The Microsoft Authenticator app, SMS verification, and voice call verification. The other choices are incorrect because FIDO security keys may require purchasing physical keys, hardware. They're not free. OAuth software tokens, they requires Azure AD Premium P1 license for custom token support. and Windows Hello for Business, while free for Windows users, it's not suitable for non-Windows devices in your environment. Question 3. You have an Azure subscription that contains a Microsoft Entra tenant and an Azure web app named App1. A user named User1 needs permission to manage App1. The solution must follow the principle of least privilege. Which role should you assign to user 1? A. Application administrator. B. Application developer. C. Cloud app security administrator. Or D. Cloud application administrator. The correct role to assign is Cloud application administrator because it grants just enough permission to manage App1 without giving unnecessary privileges. Uh, the application administrator is too much access because it includes app registration, credentials, and user assignments. Application developer can register apps but cannot manage existing ones. And the Cloud App Security Administrator is intended for Defender for Cloud Apps and does not have any app management capability. So the final answer is the Cloud Application Administrator. Question 4. You need to provide an administrator with the ability to configure access reviews in Microsoft Entra Privilege Identity Management or PIM. The solution must follow the principle of least privilege. Which role should you assign to the administrator? A. Global Administrator. B. Privilege Authenticator Administrator. C. Privilege Role Administrator. Or C. Security Administrator. The correct answer is Privileged Role Administrator. To configure access reviews in Microsoft Entra Privilege Identity Management or PIM, the user needs permissions related to managing privileged roles. The Privileged Role Administrator role access allows users to 1. Configure and manage PIM, 2. Approve or deny role activation requests, and 3. Configure access reviews for privileged roles. The global administrator has full control, so in this case it violates the principle of least privilege. Privilege Authenticator Administrator manages authentication methods, not PIM access reviews. And Security Administrator manages security settings but doesn't control PIM access reviews. Question 5. You manage Microsoft Entra tenant. You disable the users can register applications option in Microsoft Entra. A user reports that they are unable to register an application. You need to ensure that the user can register applications. The solution must follow the principle of least privilege. What should you do? A. Assign the application developer role to the user. B. Assign the authentication administrator role to the user. C. Assign the Cloud App Security Administrator role to the user. Or D. Enable the users can register application option. The correct answer is assign the application developer role to the user. Since the users can register applications option is disabled tenant-wide, regular users cannot register apps. To follow the principle of least privilege and still allow a specific user to register applications, one application developer is the most appropriate role. It grants permission to register and manage applications without giving broader access like application administrator or enabling tenant-wide permissions. So the authentication administrator manages authentication methods, not apps. Um, Cloud App Security Administrator is wrong because it manages Microsoft Defender for cloud apps, and enabling the users can register application allows all users to register apps, which is not least privilege. So the least privilege targeted solution is to assign the application developer role to the user. Question 6. You have an administrator subscription named Sub1 that contains the following resources. A resource group named RG1 that contains a virtual machine named VM1, a resource group named RG2 that has an Azure App Service plan named ASP1, and a web app named App1. You need to provide a user with the ability to perform the following tasks. 1. List web apps hosted in ASP1, and 2. Create new virtual machines in RG1. Which two actions should you perform? A. Add a deny assignment for RG2. B. Assign the user the contributor role in the RG1 scope. 3. Assign the user the reader role for ASP1. Or 4. Assign the user the reader role for Sub1. To meet the requirements, the correct actions are to assign the user the contributor role in the RG1 scope, and to assign the user the reader role for ASP1. To create new virtual machines in RG1, the user needs contributor permissions on RG1, which allows management of all resources, including creating virtual machines. To list web apps hosted in ASP1, the user needs reader access on the App Service Plan ASP1 to view web apps hosted in it. The other choices are wrong because add a denied assignment for RG1, it's irrelevant and would block access not granted. Assign the reader role for Sub1, grant read access at the subscription level, which is broader than needed and violates then the principle of least privilege. Question 7. You need to provide an administrator with the ability to manage custom RBAC roles. The solution must follow the principle of least privilege. Which role should you assign to the administrator? A. Contributor. B. Owner. C. Privilege role administrator. Or D. User access administrator. To allow an administrator to manage custom RBAC roles while following the principle of least privilege, the correct role to assign is Privilege Role Administrator. The Privilege Role Administrator can 1. Manage role assignments in Azure AD. 2. Create and manage custom roles. And 3. Assign roles to other users excluding the global administrator. So why not the others? Well, the contributor can manage resources within a scope, but not RBAC roles. Owner has full access, including RBAC, but violates least privilege. And user access administrators can assign roles, but cannot create or manage custom roles. So the correct answer and most secure choice is the Privilege Role Administrator. Question 8. You have an Azure subscription named Sub1 that is linked to a Microsoft Entra tenant. The tenant contains a username admin1. Sub1 contains an Azure policy definition assignment named assignment1. The definition includes the deploy if not exist effect. You need to grant admin1 permissions to include a remediation task for assignment 1. Assignment 1. The solution must use the principle of least privilege. Which role should you assign to admin 1? A. Compliance administrator. B. Contributor. C. Owner. Or D. Resource policy contributor. To allow admin 1 to include a remediation task for an Azure policy assignment with the deploy if not exist effect and adhere to least privilege, the correct role is the resource policy contributor. The resource policy contributor, 1, can create and manage policy assignments. 2, can create remediation tasks for policies with the deploy if not exist or modified effects, and follows the principle of least privilege. Compliance administrator manages compliance data but cannot manage policy assignments or remediations. Contributor can do almost everything but has more permissions than necessary, violating least privilege. And owner has full permissions, which is excessive. Question 9. You create a web API and register the API as a Microsoft Entra application. You need to expose a function in the API to ensure that administrator must provide consent to apps that use the API. What should you add to your app registration? A client application. B, a permission. C, a scope. Or D, an application ID URI. The correct answer is to expose a function in a Microsoft Entra registered web API that requires administrator consent. You should add a scope to your app registration. In Microsoft Entra ID, scopes define delegated permissions for APIs. When you define a scope like API.read, you can specify that admin1 consent is required. Control access to parts of your API. Scopes are part of the Expose an API blade in Azure App Registrations. A client application, that's the consumer, not what's added to the API registration. A permission, it's too vague. Permissions are implemented via scopes or app roles, and an application ID URI identifies the API but doesn't define access control. Question 10. You need a Microsoft Entra app registration. You need to consent to the use of a given API in your app for all users. What should you add to your app registration? A client application. B, a permission. C, a scope. D, an application ID URI. For this scenario, where you need to consent to the use of a given API in your app for all users, the correct item to add to your app registration is a permission. When your app calls another API like Microsoft Graph or a custom API, it needs permissions, either delegator or application permissions defined in the app registration. These are the exact items that require admin consent. By adding permissions to the app registration, you're defining what access your app is requesting, and those permissions are what users or admins are prompted to consent to. A client application, this is unrelated here. The current app is already acting as the client. A scope, this is something that API exposes, not something the calling app adds. And an application ID URI, this is used to identify APIs when configuring exposed scopes, but not for consuming APIs. Question 11. You are managing permissions consent for a Microsoft Entra app registration. You already know all the permissions that an application will need. You also know which resources the application will access. You need to choose the consent type of the application. The solution must follow the principle of least privilege. Which type of consent should you choose? A. Admin consent. B. Dynamic user consent. 3. Implement incremental user consent. Or D. Static user consent. The correct answer is static user consent. You already know all the permissions the application will need in advance. That means you don't need the flexibility of dynamic or incremental consent. A static user consent involves defining all the permissions that the app will request at registration time. Users are then prompted to consent to all those permissions the first time they sign in. This model aligns with the principle of least privilege because 1, you define exactly what is needed, nothing more, and 2, you avoid asking for permissions dynamically, which could lead to over permissioning over time. The other choices are wrong because admin consent only needed when the app needs permission that regular users cannot grant. For example, application permissions or organization-wide access. Dynamic user consent. It is used when the app determines needed permissions at runtime, not in this case. And incremental user consent it is also used when permissions grow over time. Not needed here since everything is known up front. Question 12. You are creating a Microsoft Entra app registration. You are configuring credentials for the app registration and have the following requirements. Ensure that the credentials are not transmitted during authentication. Ensure that the credentials are stored securely. Ensure that credentials usage follow the principle of least privilege. What should you do? A. Commit credentials using code. B. Use certificate credentials. C. Use multiple credentials in one app. Or D. Use password credentials. The correct answer is use certificate credentials. Certificate credentials secure credentials or private keys because private keys are not transmitted during authentication. Instead, a signed token is used. Certificates are stored securely, that is, in Azure Key Vault, and are less vulnerable to exposure compared to passwords. Certificates can be scoped to a specific permission, aligning with the principle of least privilege. And password credential transmit secrets over the network. And committing credential in code is insecure, and multiple credentials do not inherently meet the requirements. Question 13. You create an application named App1 in an Azure tenant. You need to host the application as a multi-tenant application for any users in Azure while restricting non-Azure accounts. You need to allow administrator in other Azure tenants to add the application to their gallery. Which Azure CLI command should you run? In the provider scenario, where you need to host the application as a multi-tenant application for any users in Azure, while restricting non-Azure accounts and allowing administrator in other Azure tenants to add the application to their gallery, the correct Azure CLI command is AZ AD app create dash dash display name app1 sign dash in dash audience Azure AD multiple orgs. The dash dash display dash name parameter sets the name of the application. The dash dash sign dash in dash audience parameter specify who can use the application. The value Azure AD multiple orgs makes the application available to users in any Azure AD tenant, thereby supporting multi-tenancy. This does not include personal Microsoft accounts, thus focusing only on Azure accounts, which aligns with your requirement to restrict non-Azure accounts. The settings also allows administrators in other Azure AD tenants to see and manage the app in their tenant galleries, facilitating its addition and management across different organizational boundaries. Question 14. Your organization uses Microsoft Entra ID to manage access to enterprise applications. Recently, there are concerns about unauthorized application registrations and consents granted by users. You need to restrict application registration and consent permissions to selected users only. What should you do? A. Assign the application developer role to selected users. B. Assign the cloud application administrator role to all users. C. Disable user consent for all applications. Or D. Set users can register applications to no and assign the application developer role to selected users. The correct answer is set users can register applications to no and assign the application developer role to selected users. Setting users can register application to no globally disables app registration for all users by default. Assigning the application developer role to selected users grant explicit permissions to those users to register applications, ensuring only authorized individuals can do so. This combination enforces the principle of least privilege and addresses concerns about unauthorized registration. Application developer role alone does not block other users if the global setting remains enabled. Cloud Application Administrator for all users is overly permissive, and disabling user consent only addresses consent issues, not app registrations. Question 15. Your company has recently adopted Microsoft Entra Permissions Management to enhance its zero trust security model across multiple Microsoft Cloud permissions. You need to ensure that permissions are right-sized and continuously monitored to prevent overprivileged identities. Which strategies should you implement? A. Enable role-based access control. B, implement conditional access policies. C, schedule periodic permissions reviews. Or D, use the permission creep index. The correct answer is use the permission creep index. Permission creep index, PCI, is a metric in Microsoft Entra Permissions Management that quantifies excessive permissions. It helps identify and right size overprivileged identities by continuously monitoring and analyzing unused or unnecessary permissions. This aligns with zero trust principles by ensuring least privilege through dynamic adjustments of permissions rather than relying solely on periodic manual reviews. Role-based access control, RBAC, and conditional access policies are foundational but do not inherently address continuous monitoring of permission creep. Periodic reviews are reactive and not real time. Here is the Microsoft Entra Admin Center. And in the Microsoft Admin Center, from here you can get to permissions management. Some of the key points in permissions management, it's Microsoft Entra Permission Management is a cloud infrastructure entitlement management or a SIEM solution for managing cloud infrastructure entitlements across Azure, AWS, and GCP. Permissions gap. Over 90% of identities use less than 5% of their permissions, increasing the risk of breaches. The Permission Creep Index, or PCI, provides granular visibility into unused permissions and helps identify risk areas. A higher PCI score indicates more unused permissions. The remediation component enforces policies for least privilege and just-in-time access to ensure that users have only the permissions that they need for specific tasks. And machine learning power anomaly detection monitors potential vulnerabilities and provides context-rich forensic alerts and reports for quick investigation and remediation. Question 16. You have an Azure subscription that contains an Azure Kubernetes service AKS cluster named AKS1 and a user named user1. You need to ensure that user1 has access to AKS1 secrets. The solution must follow the principle of least privilege. What role should you assign to user1? A. Azure Kubernetes Service RBAC admin. B. Azure Kubernetes Service RBAC Cluster admin. C. Azure Kubernetes Service RBAC Reader. Or D. Azure Kubernetes Service RBAC Writer. The correct answer is the Azure Kubernetes Service RBAC Writer. The Azure Kubernetes Service RBAC Writer role allows for creating and updating resources within an AKS cluster, including the ability to manage secrets. This is critical if the user needs to create, update, or delete Kubernetes secrets, which are used to store sensitive data like passwords, tokens, and keys securely within the cluster. Despite initially seeming to provide more permissions than necessary, the writer role is indeed required for managing secrets directly, thus making it suitable for your needs while also following the principle of least privilege for this specific action within the AKS environment. This choice allows user 1 to perform the necessary actions on secrets without providing broader administrative permissions that come with roles like cluster admin. Question 17. Your company has an Azure subscription and an Amazon Web Services AWS account. You plan to deploy Kubernetes to AWS. You need to ensure that you can use Azure Monitor Container Insights to monitor container workload performance. What should you deploy first? A. AKS Engine. B. Azure Arc Enable Kubernetes. C. Azure Container Instances. D. Azure Kubernetes Service AKS, or um, F. Azure Stack HCI. The correct answer is start dash AZ JIT network access policy. The start dash AZ JIT network access policy is used to initiate a temporary access request to a JIT configured VM, opening necessary ports for a limited time. The set dash AZ JIT network access policy configures JIT policies but does not trigger access. And the get dash AZ JIT network policy retrieves policy details. And the add that AZ network security rule config modifies NSG rules manually, bypassing JIT workflows. Question 19. You have an Azure subscription. You plan to use the AZ AKS create command to deploy an Azure Kubernetes Service AKS cluster named AKS1 that has Microsoft Entra integration. You need to ensure that local accounts cannot be used on AKS1. Which flag should you use with the command? A. Disable dash local accounts. B. Generate dash SSH dash keys. C. Kubelet dash config. Or D. Windows dash admin dash username. The correct answer is disable dash local dash accounts. The dash dash disable dash local dash accounts flag explicitly prevents the use of local Kubernetes accounts on the AKS cluster, enforcing authentication through Microsoft Entra ID or Azure AD. This aligns with the requirements to disable local accounts for enhanced security in Microsoft Entra integrated cluster. Other flags like generate-ssh-keys or the windows-admin-username are unrelated to authentication methods. Question 20. You need to enable encryption at rest by using customer managed keys or CMKs. Which two services support CMKs? A. Azure Blob Storage. B. Azure Disk Storage. C. Azure Files. D. Azure NetApp Files. Or F. Log Analytics Workspace. The correct answers are 1. Azure Blob Storage and 2. Azure Files. Azure Blob Storage supports using customer managed keys for encrypting blob data. This allows you to control the encryption keys and the associated key lifecycle management operations using the Azure Key Vault. Uh, Two Azure files, which also support custom managed keys for encryption, providing similar capabilities for file shares managed in Azure, enabling more rigorous data governance and security controls by allowing enterprises to maintain control of the encryption keys. Question 21. You have a storage account that contains multiple containers, blobs, queues, and tables. You need to create a key to allow an application to access only data from a given table in the storage account. Which authentication method should you use for the application? A. SaaS, B. Shared, C. Service SaaS, or D. User delegation SaaS? The correct answer is Service SaaS. Service SaaS is scoped to a specific resource, like a table, and grants granular permissions, like, for example, rewrite for the table only, adhering to the principle of least privilege. A shared key provides full access to the entire storage account, violating the requirement. User delegation SaaS uses Azure AD credentials, but is primarily designed for blob storage and not supported for Azure table storage. And a general SaaS, account SaaS, can cover multiple services and resources, making it too broad. Question 22. You have an Azure SQL database server named Server1 that contains a database named DB1. You create an auditing policy for DB1. After a few weeks, you create 5 more databases in Server 1. You then create a new auditing policy for Server 1. You notice that auditing entries for DB1 are duplicated. You need to ensure that auditing entries for all existing and future databases are not duplicated. What should you do? A. Configure the policy used in DB1 with the same settings as the policy on Server 1. B. Configure the policy used on Server 1 with the same setting as the policy on DB1. C. Create a policy for each of the 5 new databases. Or D. Disable auditing for DB1. The correct answer is disable auditing for DB1. Auditing entries for DB1 are duplicated because both the database level policy DB and the server level policy server 1 are active. The server level policy audits all databases in server 1, including DB1. So disabling auditing only for DB1 ensures that only the server level policy applies, eliminating duplication. The server level policy will automatically audit all existing and future databases under server 1, preventing duplication without manual configuration for each database. Question 23. You have an Azure SQL database that contains sensitive information. You need to ensure that when sensitive information is queried by operators, the data is not fully displayed. What should you enable for the database? A. Always encrypted. B. Dynamic data masking. C. Symmetric key encryption. Or D. Transparent data encryption, or TDE. The correct answer is dynamic data masking. Dynamic data masking obfuscates sensitive data in query results. masking, for example, credit card numbers to show only the last four digits, ensuring operators cannot view full sensitive values. Always encrypted and TDE focus on encryption at rest or in transit, but the encrypted data is fully visible to unauthorized users. Symmetric key encryption encrypts data at rest, but does not mask it during the queries. Question 24. You have an application that securely shares files hosted in Azure Blob Storage to external users by using an account SAS. One of the SAS token is compromised. How should you stop the compromised SAS token from being used? A. Regenerate the storage account access keys. B. Set the allow public anonymous access to setting for the storage account. Set the allow public anonymous access to setting for the storage account. C. Set the secure transfer required property for the storage account. Or D. Switch to managed identities. The correct answer is regenerate the storage account access keys. Regenerating the storage account access keys immediately invalidates all SAS tokens, including the compromised one created with the old keys. This is the only way to revoke an active SAS token before its expiration. Other options like enabling secure transfer or switching to managed identities do not address the compromised SAS. Public access settings are unrelated to SAS revocation. Question 25. Your organization uses Microsoft Azure SQL database to store sensitive customer information, including email addresses and credit card numbers. The database is accessed by various departments, including customer service and development teams. Currently, all users can view the full data, posing a security risk. You need to restrict access to sensitive data for non-privileged users. Each correct answer presents part of the solution. Which two actions should you take? A. Grant unmasked permission for the email column. B. Implement dynamic data masking on sensitive columns. C. Implement row level security for sensitive data. Or D. Use always encrypted for sensitive columns. The correct answers are 1. Grant unmasked permission for the email column. And 2. Implement dynamic data masking on sensitive columns. Grant unmasked permission for the email column allows a specific roles or users who require access to unmasked data for legitimate purposes like customer service or compliance checks to view the actual data in the email column. It is a controlled way to manage access to sensitive data, ensuring that only authorized personnel can view the full data. And 2, implement dynamic data masking on sensitive columns. This helps protect sensitive information from unauthorized access by automatically masking it to non-privileged users. This is a key strategy for ensuring that sensitive data like credit card numbers and email addresses are not exposed to users who do not need to see this information in its unmasked form. Question 26. You plan to provide connectivity between Azure and your company's data center. You need to define how to establish the connection. The solution must meet the following requirements. 1. All traffic between the data center and Azure must be encrypted. Two, bandwidth must be between 10 and 100 gigabps. What should you use for the connection? A. Azure VPN Gateway. B. ExpressRoute Direct. C. ExpressRoute with a provider. Or D. VPN Gateway with Azure Virtual WAN. The correct solution for establishing a connection between Azure and your company's data center with encrypted traffic and a bandwidth requirement of between 10 and 100 gigabps is ExpressRoute Direct. ExpressRoute Direct allows for uh, very high bandwidth connectivity up to 100 gigabps, which fits well with the specified range of 10 to 100 gigabps. It also supports layer 2 MACsec encryption, providing the required security for all data transmitted between the data center and Azure. This makes it the most suitable option for scenarios demanding high throughput and strong encryption. Azure VPN Gateway is incorrect because it typically supports lower bandwidths up to about 1.25 gigabit per second and uses internet-based VPN tunnels, which may not provide the bandwidth requirements of up to from 10 to 100 gigabps specified in your scenario. ExpressRoute with a provider is incorrect because while ExpressRoute with a provider can offer up to 10 gigabps per circuit and thus support encryption, it generally does not reach bandwidth as high as 100 gigabps without multiple circuits, which can complicate setup and increase costs. This option is also typically less flexible than ExpressRoute Direct for very high bandwidth needs. And VPN Gateway with Azure Virtual WAN is incorrect because this option, like the Azure VPN Gateway, typically supports lower bandwidth and it's more suited for integrating various networking services rather than providing high throughputs and dedicated connectivity. It is primarily used for complex network topologies and not necessarily for a straightforward high bandwidth needs between 2 points. Question 27. You have an Azure virtual network named VNet1. VNet1 is a resource VNet1 is in a resource group named RG1. VNet1 contains the following two subnets. Subnet 1, 10.0.1.0/24, and subnet 2, 10.0.2.0/24. You need to configure access to a storage account named SA1 in a resource group named RG2. The solution must ensure that SA1 can only be accessed from subnet 2. What should you run? To configure access so that the storage account named SA1 can only be accessed from subnet 2, the correct Azure CLI command is AZ, a storage account, network rule add, resource group RG2, account dash name SA1, IP address 10.0.2.0/24, AZ storage account update, default that action deny, name SA1, resource group RG2. So this command sequence is correct because it first adds a network rule to the storage account SA1, allowing access only from the IP range 10.0.2.0/24, which corresponds to subnet 2. The second part of the command, AZ storage account update dash dash default dash action deny dash dash name SA1 dash dash resource dash group RG2 sets the default action for the storage account to deny, which means that all other access requests do not match any specified rule will be denied. This effectively restricts access to the storage account to only the specified subnet. This is the most direct and effective way to ensure that only subnet 2 can access the storage account while blocking all other potential access rules. Question 28. You need to configure the IP firewall for an Azure Cosmos DB account. The solution must meet the following requirements. 1. Allow an Azure App Service web app to access the account. 2. Allow a username user1 to access the account from the Azure portal. And 3. Block all other access to the account. Which two actions should you perform? Each correct action presents part of the solution. A. Add the IP address of user1 to the allowed IP address range of the Azure Cosmos DB account. B. Add the web app outbound IP addresses to the allowed IP address range of the Azure Cosmos DB account. C. Select allow access from the Azure portal. Or D. Sign in as user1 and select add my current IP to the allowed IP address range. The correct actions to configure the IP firewall for an Azure Cosmos DB account in these scenarios are: 1. Add the web app's outbound IP address to the allowed IP address range of the Azure Cosmos DB account. This ensures that the Azure App Service web app can specifically access the Cosmos DB account, adhering to the requirement to allow access from the web app. And 2. Select allow access from the Azure portal. This option allows user 1 to access the Cosmos DB account from the Azure portal. It essentially enables access from all IPs used by the Azure portal, which would include those used by user 1 when accessing the portal. The incorrect action that this was so first ChatGPT got it wrong. But question 29. You have a virtual network that contains an Azure Kubernetes Service AKS workload and an internal local balancer. Multiple virtual networks are managed by multiple teams. You are unable to change any of the IP addresses. You need to ensure that clients from virtual networks in your Azure subscription can access the AKS cluster by using the internal load balancer. What should you do? The correct choice for ensuring clients from virtual networks in your Azure subscription can access the Azure Kubernetes Service AKS cluster using the internal load balancer is to create a private link service on the virtual network and instruct users to access the cluster by using a private link endpoint in the virtual networks. Private link service allows you to securely connect to services hosted on Azure via a private endpoint. This service enables you to access the AKS cluster through the internal load balancer in a manner that is not only secure but also keeps the traffic within the Azure network. This method ensures that even if multiple teams manage different virtual networks, each can establish a connection to the AKS cluster without exposing the services to the public internet or dealing with potential IP address conflicts. This approach also aligns with scenarios where IP address changes are not possible or where network overlap uh, issues might exist, making direct peering or other connectivity methods problematic. So using private link provides fine-grained access control and is typically preferred in environments requiring high levels of security and isolation. Question 31. You have an Azure subscription that contains a web app named App1 and a virtual network named VNet1. VNet1 contains the following subnets. Subnet 1 is connected to a virtual machine. Subnet 2 has a Microsoft Data Storage Service endpoint. Subnet 3 has subnet delegation to the Microsoft.SQL / managed instance service. And Subnet 4 has no additional configurations. You need to integrate Web App 1 with VNet 1. To which subnets can you connect Web App 1? To integrate Web 1 with VNet 1 effectively, considering the configuration of each subnet, so given these details, the subnets that you can connect Web 1 to are subnet 4 because it has no additional configurations, making it the most flexible and compatible for integrating new services like Azure App Service. And subnet 2, although it has a storage service endpoint, this doesn't typically prevent integration with Azure App Service. Service endpoints are used to secure the subnet for use with the designated service, but do not necessarily preclude the use of Azure App Service VNet integration. Therefore, the correct answer is likely subnet 2 and subnet 4 only. This choice supports integration with the Azure App Service by providing connectivity options without the specific restrictions that other service integration or delegation might impose. And when we're talking about those restrictions, for example, subnet 1 is connected to a virtual machine. Typically does not preclude VNet integration, but it's not specifically configured for services like app services. Subnet 3 has subnet delegation to the Microsoft.SQL / managed instance service. This delegation is for a specific service, which might preclude other types of service from being integrated into this subnet. Question 32. You have an Azure subscription that contains a virtual network named VNet1. VNet1 contains the following subnets. Subnet 1 has a connected virtual machine. Subnet 2 has a Microsoft Data Storage Service endpoint. Subnet 3 has subnet delegation to the Microsoft.web / server farm service, and Subnet 4 has no additional configurations. You need to deploy an Azure SQL managed instance named managed1 to VNet1. To which subnets can you connect managed1? Part of the previous question was wrong. Thank you for the update. It appears that the correct answer includes Subnet 2, Subnet 3, and Subnet 4 for deploying an Azure SQL Managed instance. So, Subnet 2 is Microsoft that storage that service endpoint. Despite having a service endpoint for storage, this subnet can still host a managed SQL instance. Service endpoints modify the network routing to secure access to Azure service resources like uh, Azure storage from the subnet. Subnet 3, subnet delegation to Microsoft.web/server forms. Subnet delegation specifically allows a service like Azure App Service to use a subnet. This does not inherently preclude its use for the Azure SQL managed instances, provided the subnet's CIDR notation and service delegation configuration do not interfere with the requirement of the SQL managed instances. And subnet 4 has no additional configuration. This remains a valid choice because it's free from any specific service configuration or delegation, providing a clean slate for deployment. It is essential to note that while subnets may have a specific service endpoints or delegation, they can still support other types of Azure resources, including Azure SQL managed instances, unless explicitly restricted by configuration conflicts or Azure policies. Thus, the flexibility of Azure networking allows for these configurations to coexist under certain conditions, making Subnet 2, Subnet 3, and Subnet 4 suitable options for hosting the SQL managed instance. Question 33. You have an Azure App Service web app named App1. You need to configure network controls for App1. App1 must only allow user access through Azure Front Door. Which two components should you implement? Each correct answer presents part of the solution. A. Access restriction based on service tag. B. Access restriction based on the IP address of Azure Front Door. C. Application security groups. Or D. Header filters. The correct answer is 1. Access restriction based on service tag, and 2. Header filters. Azure provides a special service tag named Azure Front Door backend, which represents the IP ranges used by Front Door to connect to backend services. Using this tag allows you to restrict access to only traffic coming from Front Door without managing IP ranges manually. Header filters. While the service tag allows front door traffic, it doesn't distinguish between your front door instance and someone else's. So to further lock down access, header filtering is used to inspect a custom header like X-Azure FDID sent from your front door. You can then block requests that don't include the correct header. Access restriction based on the IP address of Azure Front Door. Well, this is incorrect because Azure Front Door uses a large and dynamic IP range, which can change frequently. Managing these IPs manually is error-prone and not recommended. That's why service tags like Azure Front Door backend exist. Application security groups. These are used within virtual networks or VNets to group resources for NSG rules. App services are not part of VNets by default, and App1 isn't deployed in a VNet in this scenario. Question 34. You have an Azure subscription that contains an Azure firewall named FW1. You need to create a new rule named Rule 1. The solution must ensure that Rule 1 has the highest priority in the FW1 firewall policy. Which priority settings should you configure for Rule 1? 0, 1, 100, 1000, or 65,000? The correct answer is 100. Azure firewall rule priorities must be between 100, which is the highest priority, and 65,000, which is the lowest priority. So setting rule 1 to 100 gives it the highest priority possible. Question 35. Your organization has multiple Microsoft Azure Firewall instances deployed across different regions to ensure its network infrastructure. You need to ensure consistent security policies across all firewalls and simplify management. What should you do? A. Deploy identical configurations using ARM templates. B. Use Azure Firewall Manager for centralized policy management. C. Use Azure Policy for managing firewall configurations. Or D. Use individual ARM templates for each firewall without central coordination. To ensure consistent security policies across multiple Azure Firewall instances and simplify management, the correct answer is use Azure Firewall Manager for centralized policy management. The other options are incorrect because deploy identical configuration using our templates. Our templates help replicate configurations, but they don't enforce ongoing consistency or simplify centralized management. Use Azure Policy for managing firewall configurations. Azure Policy helps enforce resource compliance, but not for managing complex firewall rules or policies. Use individual ARM templates for each firewall without central coordination. This leads to configuration drift and manual overhead. So the opposite of simplification in this case. You have the following security policy deployed on an Azure subscription. You successfully deploy a new storage account. Which statement is true? A. Accessing the data by using SAS token is enabled. B. Accessing the data in the storage account is enabled for users that have the storage account contribute to role. C. Usage of Microsoft Entra authentication is enforced. Or D. Usage of the storage account share key is allowed. The correct answer is usage of Microsoft Entra authentication is enforced. When share key access is disabled, authentication must use Microsoft Entra ID or SAS tokens. This policy enforces Entra-based authentication for better security. So accessing the data using SAS token is enabled. Not necessarily. This policy doesn't mention SAS tokens. It only disables share key access. SAS tokens must be enabled separately. Accessing data is enabled for users with the storage account contributor role. The role allows management operations, not data plane access. Usage of a storage account share key is allowed. This is explicitly denied by the policy. Question 37. Your company has a multi-cloud online environment. You plan to use Microsoft Defender for Cloud to protect all supported online environments. Which three environments support Defender for Cloud? A. Alibaba Cloud. B. Amazon Web Services AWS. C. Azure DevOps. D, GitHub, and E, Oracle Cloud. The three environments that support Microsoft Defender for Cloud are Amazon Web Services, AWS, Azure DevOps, and GitHub. Question 38. You have an Azure subscription that contains a username admin1. You need to ensure that admin1 can create and assign custom security initiatives in Microsoft Defender for Cloud. The solution must follow the principle of least privilege. Which role should you assign to admin1? A, Global Administrator. B, Owner of the subscription. C, Security Admin. Or D, Security Assessment Contributor.
The correct answer here is owner of the subscription. To create and assign custom security initiatives in Microsoft Defender for Cloud, the user must have permission not only to create policies and initiatives, but also to assign them. An initiative assignment is a management group or subscription level action. So the owner role of the subscription level includes 1, full access to all resources, 2, permission to assign policy and initiative definitions, and delegation capability. This is required for assigning custom initiatives, especially when they involve enforcing policy assignments at a scope, subscription, resource group, etc. Why not the others? Well, the global administrator has Azure AD privileges, not Azure resource level permissions. Security admin can manage Defender for Cloud configurations, but cannot assign custom initiatives at the subscription level. And the security assessment contributor has read-only for assessments, no permissions to assign initiatives. Question 39, you have an Azure subscription. You need to assign a security policy to the subscription. Which Microsoft Defender for Cloud setting should you use? A, environment settings. B, security posture. C, security solutions. Or D, workload protections. To assign a security policy to an Azure subscription in Microsoft Defender for Cloud, the correct setting to use is the environment settings. Environment settings allow you to select the Azure subscription or other environments like AWS or GCP. From there, you can assign a security policy, including custom initiatives, to that subscription or environment. The security posture displays the secure score and recommendations, but doesn't let you assign policies. Security solutions shows third-party partner integrations. It is not used for policy management. And workload protections is where you enable Microsoft Defender plans per workload, like for VMs, SQL service, etc. But again, is not where you assign policy, security policies. Question 40, you have an Azure subscription. You need to recommend a solution that uses crawling technology of Microsoft to discover and actively scan assets within an online infrastructure. The solution must also discover new connections over time. What should you include in the recommendation? A Microsoft Defender for Cloud Custom Initiative. B, Microsoft Defender External Attack Surface Management, or EASM. C, Microsoft Defender for Servers. Or D, the Microsoft Cloud Security Benchmark, MCSB. The correct answer is Microsoft Defender External Attack Surface Management, EASM. Microsoft Defender EASM uses Microsoft's Internet Scale crawling technology to continuously scan the public internet. It discovers assets that are linked to your organization, even those not explicitly declared. It continuously updates and tracks new connections and changes in your external surface. This helps identify shadow IT, misconfigured domains, exposed infrastructure, and more. Why the others are incorrect? Well, Microsoft Defender for Cloud custom initiatives are used for compliance and security policies, not for discovery via crawling. The Microsoft Defender for Servers focuses on securing server workloads, not external asset discovery, and Microsoft Cloud Security Benchmark, or MCSB, is a set of best practices for securing cloud environments, not a discovery or a scanning tool. So to set up EASM, first you need to have a Microsoft Defender for Cloud enabled on your subscription. You need to have a security admin or admin or owner role on the subscription. You have access to Microsoft Defender EASM, typically included with Defender CSPM or Defender for Threat Intelligence. 2, to enable Defender EASM in Microsoft Defender for Cloud, you go to the Microsoft Azure portal, open Microsoft Defender for Cloud, navigate to Environment Settings, select the subscription you want to onboard, and under Plan Configurations, you enable Microsoft Defender for External Attack Surface Management, or EASM, and then you click on Save. 3, configure EASM via the Microsoft Security Exposure Management portal. After enabling EASM, configure the discovery. You go to the Microsoft Security Exposure Management portal, which is the Microsoft security.microsoft.com/exposure-management. Select Attack Surface Management, Discovery Groups. Click on the plus sign and add a discovery group. Configure, for example, a group name, discovery method, whether it is domain, IP block, whois, info, etc. Add known identities like domains, IP address ranges, SSL certificates, whois registration data, etc. Click Create to begin scanning. 4, review and monitor. After deployment, monitor discover assets, domains, subdomains, and more. Track disk scores, insights, and attack surface growth. Use recommendations to reduce the risk. Optionally, integrate with Microsoft Sentinel or other tools. Question 41. You set periodic recurring scans to on while implementing a Microsoft Defender for SQL vulnerability assessment. How often will the scan be triggered? A, at a recurrence that you configured, B, once a day, C, once a month, or D, once a week? The correct answer is once a week. Recurrent scans will trigger once a week. This value cannot be changed, and it is set by Microsoft. Question 42. You have an Azure subscription and the following SQL deployments. An Azure SQL database named DB1, an Azure SQL Server named SQL Server 1, an instance of SQL Server on Azure virtual machines named VM1 that has Microsoft SQL Server 2022 installed, and an on-premises server named Server 1 that has SQL Server 2019 installed. Which deployments can be protected by using Microsoft Defender for Cloud? The correct answer is DB1, SQL Server 1, and VM1 only. Microsoft Defender for Cloud support Azure SQL databases, Azure SQL Managed Instance, SQL Server on Azure VMs, SQL Server on Arc-enabled service, that means on-prem or multi-cloud. Since Server 1 isn't stated as Arc-enabled, it's not supported in this scenario. Question 43. You have an Azure subscription that contains an Azure Kubernetes Service AKS cluster named AKS1. You need to protect AKS1 by using Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Which Defender plan should you use? A. Microsoft Defender for App Service. B. Microsoft Defender for Containers. C. Microsoft Defender for Resource Manager. Or D. Microsoft Defender for Servers. The correct answer is Microsoft Defender for Containers. Microsoft Defender for Containers is especially designed to 1. Secure Kubernetes clusters, including AKS. B. Provide runtime protection, vulnerability scanning, threat detection, and compliance assessment. And C. Monitor container registries, nodes, and workloads. To enable it, you go to Microsoft Defender for Cloud in the Azure portal. Under Environment Settings, choose your subscription, select Plans, and from Microsoft Defender for Containers, you just basically toggle it on. Question 44. You have a Linux virtual machine in an on-premises data center that is used as a forwarder for Microsoft Sentinel by using CEF formatted logs. The timestamp on events retrieved from the forward is the time the agent on the forward received the event, not the time the event occurred on the system it came from. What should you you need to ensure that Microsoft Sentinel receives the time the event was generated. What should you do? The correct answer is run time-generated.py on the Ceph forwarder. This ensures that Microsoft Sentinel receives the correct event generation time, not the time the event was received by the forwarder. CEF forwarders by default log the time the event was received. Time-generated.py updates the forwarder's syslog configuration to extract and forward the original timestamp. So this aligns with best practices for accurate threat investigation and time reconstruction in Sentinel. Question 45. You have custom alert rules in Microsoft Sentinel. The rules exceed the query length limitations. You need to resolve the issue. Which function should you use for the rule? A. ADX functions. B. Azure functions with a time trigger. C. Stored procedures. Or D. User-defined functions. The correct answer is user-defined functions. User-defined functions allow you to move complex or lengthy logic into a reusable KQL function, which can then be called from your alert rule with a simple line. This keeps the rule under the length limit and more maintainable. The other options are incorrect because ADX functions are native to Azure Data Explorer, not directly used in Sentinel Analytics rules. Action functions with a timer trigger are useful for automation, but not for query simplification in Sentinel rules. And store procedures are for relational databases like SQL Server, not relevant to Sentinel or KQL. Question 46. You have an Azure Key Vault that is configured with Azure role-based access control permissions model. You need to ensure that a user can read and write keys to the Key Vault. The solution must follow the principle of least privilege. Which role should you assign to the user? A, the Key Vault Certificates Officer. B, Key Vault Crypto Officer. C, Key Vault Crypto Service Encryption User. Or D, Key Vault Secrets Officer. The correct answer is Key Vault Crypto Officer. The Key Vault Crypto Officer role provides read and write permissions for keys only, which is exactly what's needed. It does not grant access to secrets or certificates, thus aligning with least privilege. Why are the others incorrect? Well, Key Vault Certificates Officer grant access only to certificates, not keys. Key Vault Crypto Service Encryption User can only read keys, not write them. And the Key Vault Secrets Officer grant access to secrets and not keys. Question 47. You are designing an Azure solution that stores encrypted data in Azure storage. You need to ensure that the keys used to encrypt the data cannot be permanently deleted until 60 days after they are deleted. The solution must minimize costs. What should you do? A, store keys in an HSM protected key vault that has soft delete and purge protection enabled. B, store keys in an HSM protected key vault that has soft delete enabled. C, store the keys in a software protected key vault that has soft delete and purge protection enabled. Or D, store the keys in a software protected key vault that has soft delete enabled and purge protection disabled. The correct answer is store keys in a software protected key vault that has soft delete and purge protection enabled. Soft delete ensures that deleted keys are retained for a retention period. The default is 90 days, configurable between 7 and 90 days, preventing immediate permanent deletion. Purge protection blocks the ability to permanently delete purge that is soft deleted key before the retention period expires. Software protected key vault is less expensive than an HSM protected key vault, satisfying the requirement to minimize cost. Question 48. You are designing a solution that must meet FIPS 140-2 Level 3 compliance in Azure. Where should the solution maintain encryption keys? A managed HSM. B, a software protected Azure Key Vault. C, an Azure SQL managed instance database. or D, an HSM protected Azure Key Vault? The correct answer is a managed HSM. Managed HSM, or the hardware security module in Azure, is FIPS 142-2 level 3 validated, which is a strict compliance requirement for high assurance cryptographic operations. The service offers dedicated HSM instances managed by Azure, but isolated per tenant, meeting regulatory and compliance mandates like FIPS 140-2 Level 3. Question 49. You need to grant an application access to read connection strings stored in Azure Key Vault. The solution must follow the principle of least privilege. Which role assignment should you use? A, Key Vault Crypto Officer, B, Key Vault Reader, C, Key Vault Secrets Officer, or D, Key Vault Secrets User? The correct answer is Key Vault Secret User. The Key Vault Secret User has read access to secret contents like connection strings, password, etc., and does not have access to keys or certificates, aligning perfectly with least privilege. Question 50. Your organization has Microsoft Defender for Cloud to manage security compliance across multiple cloud environments. The compliance team notices discrepancies in the compliance status reports generated from the regulatory compliance dashboard. You need to ensure that the compliance data is consistently updated and accurately reflects the current state of your cloud resources. Each correct answer presents part of the solution. Which three actions should you take? A, enable continuous export to a log analytics workspace. B, enable manual compliance checks. C, enable weekly compliance status snapshots. C, integrate with Microsoft Purview Compliance Manager. And that's E, a schedule assessment every 12 hours. The three correct actions to ensure that Microsoft Defender for Cloud compliance data is consistently updated and accurate are: 1, enable continuous export to a log analytics workspace. This is to ensure near real-time data availability for reporting and analysis. 2, integrate with Microsoft Purview Compliance Manager. This enables centralized compliance management and alignment with regulations. And 3, a schedule assessment every 12 hours. This helps keep compliance data fresh and reflective of current resource configurations.